Everyone. My name is Anna. We're going to get started in just a moment. But before I do so, can I get you guys to maybe raise your hand or write in the Q&A box if you can see me and hear me okay? All right. If there's any kind of interferences with either, please let me know. Thank you so much. I can see lots of you raising your hands. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Awesome. Okay, we're all good. So I'm going to get started. I know we may have a few more that might join, but I will get started for now. So let me start by saying happy Wednesday. My name is Anna. I'm an occupational therapist here at the LightHouse Arabia. It's an absolute pleasure to be with you today. I'd love to go over some housekeeping before we get started. So I will be sharing my screen with you in a few moments, where you will be able to see the PowerPoint that I will be going through with you today. If there is any occasions, hopefully there will not be, where I drop out or we lose connection, please be reassured that I will be back here. Click the same link, I will be back. But fingers crossed it won't happen. It rarely does. If you have a question, please feel free to write in the Q&A box. I will get to these questions at the end. So I will ask that if I answer your question before the end, please delete that question, or you can leave it there and I will go over it again. I will try my very best to finish a little bit early. We usually run around 45 minutes, depending. And then I will leave some time for questions and answers. If I don't get to answer your question, I will answer it, or I will get you to contact me directly if you would like any more information on any of the content for today. All right. So before I share my screen, I see lots of people have just joined, so I will reintroduce myself. My name is Anna. I'm an occupational therapist here at the LightHouse Arabia. It's lovely to be with you. Just to give you a bit of a background on me, I'm Irish, if you can't tell. I came to Dubai over 8 years ago now, and I work with children, I work with teens, and I also work with adults. I work in schools, and I also work here at the clinic in the LightHouse Arabia. So I do lots of different things. I do lots of things with regards to developmental motor concerns with kids, sensory processing, behavior, parent coaching, mental health first aid, you name it. There's a lot in that mix. So I do hope that I am able to support you guys in answering questions. I guess my goal for today will be for you guys to walk away feeling empowered, feeling like there's something that you didn't know that you can now add to your parenting toolbox. That is my goal. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Again, for those of you who might have just joined, please feel free to put any question that you have in the Q&A box, and I will get to it at the end, okay? If there's anything that you want me to further explain that I run through or I go too fast through, I can do that at the end as well. All right, so let's get started. I'm going to share my screen, and you should be able to see it in just a moment. Okay, here we go. So you should be able to see my screen now. Please feel free to move my face wherever you like, wherever it suits your visual preference. All right, and let's get started. So today we're going to be talking about worry, anxiety. And I guess before we get started and I talk about the agenda or the lighthouse, I want you to reflect a little bit as a parent or an educator, and I want you to ask yourself, how do you view anxiety or worry? What kind of word is it to you? Is it a dirty word? Is it a positive word? Is it a well-being word? Because we all have stigmas around different things, or many of us do. So before you ever dive into the world of trying to support your child who worries too much, you really need to know, where do you stand on it? Are you a worrier? What kind of parent are you? If any of you have been to any of our parent sessions, you will know that it always starts with you, okay? It always goes back to the parent. I see parents every week come in to see me at the clinic about their kids, and we always start with the parent, because it all comes from you. We have to remember that you are their mirror. So what we're seeing in our kids, whether it's worry, whether it's anger, whether it's agitation, you name it, any emotion, usually that is the mirror of what they are seeing. So we have to be mindful of that. Okay, so before I get into some of the content for today, I'd love to introduce the Lighthouse Arabia. Now, I know many of you may be familiar with us. Some of you may have never heard of us before. We are a mental health and wellness clinic. We are based in Sakim in Dubai, and we have lots of different services and many different clinicians. These are some of our lovely team, and we are ever expanding. We are growing. As you might be able to see, we have lots of different specialities, and we're really from different parts of the world, all around the place. So that's the lovely group of people that I'm very happy to get to work with on a daily basis. We do cater for so many different age groups and so many different things here in the Lighthouse. So we do work with children. We also work with teens, adults, couples, a lot of different areas. We're well known for our psychology services here in the UAE. We also have psychiatry, occupational therapy, and speech and language therapy as well. For those of you who are mental health first aid certified, we are the only accredited provider of that here in the UAE. If you would like to learn more about how you can become a mental health first aider, I can talk about that at the end, but I won't go into it now. Okay, any questions about our services or support groups, I'm happy to answer at the end, okay? So let's get started. This is why you guys are here today, and this is what I want to get into. What are we going to talk about with regards to worry? We're going to talk about what is going on right now. What is the current state of affairs? We're going to talk about anxiety 101, the signs, the symptoms, the treatments, and of course, what you guys can do at home or as educators to really support your kids. Okay, now, before I jump into that, let's talk a little bit about child and adolescent mental health. And I guess the reason we keep these slides in here is because we need to understand what is going on, what is the prevalence out there. Some people know, some people really don't have any idea. So mental health is the leading cause of disability in young people. There are 10 to 20% of our young people who experience mental health disorders. Now, I want you to think about that. That is just a disorder, okay? That is a clinically diagnosed condition, a disorder. The number and the percentage is much higher for those young people who actually experience mental health difficulties. It may not reach a disorder or they may not get diagnosed, but that number can be much bigger. 50% of all mental illnesses begin by the age of 14 and 75% mid-20s. And I guess as I run our teen-to-teen mental health first aid services here, and I guess what I always like people to remember and kind of something to stick in their head is that when it comes to our teenagers and our youth, that figure says that almost 50% of these things start at age 14. But I'll give you another figure. Most of these issues go undetected, unrecognized, until that teen becomes an adult. Up to 25 years of age. So can you imagine this teen who never got support, who never got any kind of intervention, living with that until they're a young adult? And of course, as we all know, the longer we leave something, the worse it gets. And the prognosis changes when we don't act fast and when we don't get in there with early intervention. Nearly 1 in 3 adolescents will meet the criteria for an anxiety disorder by the age of 18 as well. Now, I guess on the topic of anxiety, anxiety is something that I really enjoy talking about, whether I'm training parents or adults. When we're talking about adults, anxiety in the workplace or anxiety at home, anxiety is something that is so common and it's everywhere. And I guess it's something that we all have. And anxiety is a very common and normal emotion. Just because you have anxiety, like we all have, does not mean that you have an anxiety disorder. And I think I need to make that very clear. But in terms of how anxiety kind of gets into the world and where we see it very differently at different ages. And to summarize that for you, I want to talk about very young kids. So with very young kids, we see things like phobias that come under the umbrella of anxiety. We see as kids get a bit older, we see more social anxiety, especially with teens. As they get a bit older, uni, and when they have to perform more, we see performance anxiety. We see all these different things at very different ages, and some of them may only come out in adulthood, but some of them do start quite young. All right. Okay, so why? And this is a question that I get of many parents and even family members and colleagues. Why are our kids more anxious now than ever? And I guess we have to take COVID into consideration. We have to be mindful of that. But there are many different reasons. And I guess we'll start by saying bubble wrapping children. What does this mean? Some people call it cotton wool. Some people call it bubble wrapping. But many parents do this unconsciously. Okay, and what are they doing? Parents are over supervising their kids. They're over protecting their kids. They're over scheduling their kids. They're over managing. Their kids are over indulging. And a result, when we do this to our kids, we don't actually give them that ability to learn. And we have to understand that kids will only learn and will only build resilience if they have opportunity to learn. So if we are protecting them and covering them from all of these things, of course, things like anxiety are going to be triggered, because as a parent, there's only so much you can do. You know, they have to go out into the world, they have to go into school, and you cannot protect them all the time. But kids who have that ability to know, okay, this is a problem, I can problem solve, I can bounce back, I am agile, those are the kids that will really strive, and they will welcome all kinds of emotions that we see as positive, and also those ones that we may perceive as negative emotions as well. We often think that their problem is our problem. Like, we see our kids fighting, we see siblings, we see it in the park, we see it in school, and that becomes your problem. I have to fix this problem. And what happens is, in this scenario, the kid has no idea what's going on. You have jumped in and saved the day and fixed the problem. But as a result, that kid learns, okay, that's all that happens in life. That's what happens. There's a problem, and this kind of magical idea that it will disappear. But then when it comes to that point in the child's life where you weren't there that time when the kid said something nasty to them, they won't know what to do. They won't have that ability to take from previous learning and problem solve. Okay, we often jump in way too early. We don't let our kids, problem solve and learn from each other. We often jump in very fast. We often look at things like entitlement, and what do we mean here? And this is something really common, and maybe some of you will be watching this thinking, that's me. Or maybe some of you will be saying, nope, check, I do all these things. But I guess entitlement is kind of like that center of the universe phenomenon that many of us do. When our kids are very young, we say, they're the best girl or boy in the world. Wow, you did better than anyone. You're the best in your class. Hands up if you're better than anyone. And, it's amazing sometimes to do that. And we think we're building their self-esteem and their confidence, and they're glowing. But also what happens is sometimes we don't know when to let this go. So for that kid, when they go into school and they learn that someone's actually better at maths than they are, or that someone has longer, prettier hair than they do, they find that really difficult to cope with, because we have built them up on this pedestal of being the most amazing child in the world, which we all know is going to hit them in some way when they dive into that outside world. And the key point here is that your child should definitely have a voice that is considered and a voice that is appreciated. But it does not have to be their way all the time. And we have to be really, really mindful of that. Kids will learn, and kids will fight back, and they will shout louder, and they will want more attention, and they will disagree. But that's part of the learning process. That's how kids learn. Often we do things like positive thinking and happiness. What do we mean by this? We don't leave room for negativity. We don't leave room for negative thoughts. Often I hear parents saying, no, don't worry about that. There's nothing to be worried about. Absolutely nothing. See, I fixed the problem, magic. And as a parent, what you think, there's very good intentions there. What you're doing is you're saying, I'm going to make you happy. I'm going to make my baby the happiest baby in the world. And you will in that moment. But what you're also doing is you're teaching a child that they shouldn't be sad, that there's no room in their heart or in their box of emotions for the negative things. So when the negative things come, and they do come, your child finds it very difficult to be able to cope with them. They judge their day being a good day on whether how positive it was. How many stars did I get in school today? How many compliments did I get about my makeup? You know, how many things happened to me? And if I didn't get these things, it's a bad day. And social media has a huge role to play here that I will get into if we have questions at the end. But we have to be mindful of that. We have to, as parents, open up to positive and negative feelings, because we cannot boost and thrive in the world unless we are open about all of them. We need to let them in, we need to accept them, we need to own them, and we need to keep them there and grow from these things. And of course, one of the oldest ones in the book, I guess, is when our expectations can be a little bit too high. That is probably one of the leading triggers of anxiety among our kids. And even if you're that parent who says, that's okay, I don't mind that you didn't get an A in your test, but you really do, I promise you that your kids will know that your words are not your truth. Remember, everything, especially with young kids, is body language, over 80%. So you have to really own your words and your attitude and your own anxieties before we can expect our kids to be emotionally resilient when it comes to managing these things. Okay, so anxiety one-on-one. Let's pause here for a moment. I asked you guys at the start, what comes to your mind when I say anxiety? And I want you to think about it. You can write it in the box if you want. You know, but many people think it's a dirty word. I meet parents and they're like, anxiety. I don't want them, like, what? I don't want that word associated with my child. Anxiety, no way. Anxiety, what I need you guys to understand is we should be using anxiety. Just like you teach your kid happy, sad, excited, anxiety should be there, or worry, or whatever you want to call it. But it's a really important emotion. It has a function. We all have anxiety. Every single one of us has anxiety in some way. Anxiety is there to help us thrive. And I'm going to speak about the functionality of anxiety in a few moments on a different slide. But anxiety has a powerful function. And instead of teaching kids, you shouldn't be worried, we need to start teaching our kids, okay, you're worried. That's okay. That's your body and your brain telling you, I need to act. I need to do something because something's wrong. Okay, very powerful thing. And I guess I mentioned COVID before I started. COVID has triggered anxiety responses in so many of us, adults and our kids and our teens, probably more than ever. And the stats are not out there yet, guys, on anxiety and what has happened over COVID. But I think we're going to get quite a shock when they do come out. And I guess the thing about anxiety that I want you to think about is, and it's interesting in the fact that we are the only species, humans, who can activate an anxiety response from a single thought alone. Okay, that anxiety response is what we refer to as the fight, the flight, or the freeze. Fight, fight. You might have heard that a lot. Fight or flight. I'm either going to fight it or I'm going to run away. And that is the functionality of anxiety. But the thing about COVID is the threat was invisible. Okay, they couldn't see it. If your child is afraid of cats, okay, they can see it. They can say, Mom, Dad, help. You pick them up, you walk away from the cat, whatever you do. But with COVID, it's invisible. So as a result, our kids and adults, we were very hypervigilant all the time. It could be anywhere. It could be everywhere. We can't see it. So this in itself triggered a different kind of anxiety. Uncertainty is the biggest trigger for anxiety, uncertainty. And right now, a lot of things are uncertain. It's uncertain whether your child may be in school tomorrow because someone in their bubble might test positive and they might not be. It's uncertain whether you get to go on holidays this summer. It's uncertain. Everything is uncertain. And for a child, they strive on certainty. They strive on routines. Kids don't know anything about what's going to happen, how to do this big problem solving, how to use this frontal lobe for executive functioning. Their frontal lobes are still growing. So they don't have the ability that we have as adults to say, it's going to be okay. We're going to manage. We're going to get through this. There will be an end. Okay, they don't have that. So they are dependent on this grounding, this schedule that we have every week. And when that is being changed on a weekly basis, we are going to see anxious kids. All right. So fear versus anxiety, let's define this. These are very different things. So I don't want you all thinking and diagnosing your kids. My kids have anxiety now. they have lots, or maybe they have something more that needs to be treated. There is a big difference. Fear is our stress response to immediate danger. Okay, so a lion comes into my room right now. My response is going to be fight, flight, or freeze. And on that note, I think mine would probably be freeze. I think I would freeze. But if that happened, that is my body's response to fear. And I can see that threat. The lion is there, okay? But the minute that trigger goes away, so the minute the lion walks back out, my anxiety response goes right back down, okay? That's what happens. That's fear. It's in front of us. It's visible. We can see it. Whereas anxiety is something that is anticipated danger, okay? It's what we think is going to happen. I think I'm going to fail my maths test tomorrow. I think that boy's not going to want to play with me anymore. That's anxiety. So you can be sitting on a beach in Barbados and you can get a thought about your boss shouting at you and you can have an anxiety response. Your kids can be thinking about the teacher giving out to them because they didn't finish all of their homework, and they might not sleep that night because their anxiety is playing in their head, okay? Anxiety is always anticipated danger, okay? Big difference between how we view depression and anxiety is that people who have depression are quite past focused, okay? They dwell. What if I did that? What went wrong? Whereas anxiety, we're always stuck in the future. What if? What will happen? When will that be? This is because we're worrying and we're thinking about everything that is outside of our control. All right, that is the big difference that I wanted to share with you. So what can you look out for? Here's the good stuff for you guys. As parents, what can you look out for, okay? Let's go through this slide first. I want you to listen to your kids and see beyond things like headaches, tummy complaints, muscle tension, restlessness, difficulty sleeping. Difficulty sleeping is probably one of the biggest things that we would see in all age groups, not just our kids. Agitated kids, having a lot of difficulty paying attention, focus, avoidance of things. This is a big one. I don't want to go to the party with my friends. I really don't want to go to school tomorrow. I can't manage. I don't want to go. Okay, with younger kids, just a refusal. You can't pinpoint why, because you know they like school, but there's something there that's making them avoid school. Crying, tantrums, meltdowns over little things, meltdowns after school about homework, having very high expectations about school or performance, or second guessing themselves, or always stuck in the future, a child or a teen who will talk a lot about what if this happens? When will this happen? I'm thinking about it. But I guess as parents, what I want you guys, and I don't want you to think, oh my goodness, my child had that yesterday. You know, all of these things are in the context of different things, and that is the frequency, how often they're happening. It is the intensity of some of these things that you're seeing, and it is the duration, how long they're lasting, okay? We're not going to be that concerned if it's something that's happening in one day, because anxiety is very normal. If your child has a spelling test tomorrow, it's very normal that they are anxious the night before and the day before, and maybe even a few days before. That's very normal anxiety. Should we ignore it? Absolutely not. We have to be there and support it, and we have to teach our kids to work through that anxiety. But it could also be something else if it is prolonged, okay? The biggest thing to look out for in terms of anxiety is change. Okay, it's change in your child's behavior. Is there things that your child will not do anymore? Is there things that your child used to enjoy and they are no longer enjoying? Change is the key word here, okay? For those of you with toddlers, some of the kind of common things that they might be fearful of are things like loud noises, being dropped, separation anxiety at nursery maybe, those kind of things. As kids get a little bit older, we see anxiety around imaginary things like a monster or the dark. When kids are around 5 or 6, we see them worried a lot about their physical well-being, getting injured, maybe getting kidnapped, natural events, storms, volcanoes, those kind of things. When we see school-age kids, primary, we see things like performance anxiety, we see behavioral anxiety, we see things like being rejected by their friends, feeling unwanted wanted in their bubble or in their social group. And also potentially a fear of death or a fear of illness can start here as well. With adolescents, then some of the main things that we would see would be in terms of social competence, how other people view them. Remember, with teens, we have a lot of physical changes going on and changes emotionally, and that kind of sense of hormonal change, and also developments in their brain that is bursting. So we need to be mindful of that as well, because that does in itself trigger that anxiety response naturally. So this is what I mentioned before about the function of anxiety. And I really like this slide, so I will talk a little bit here. This slide shows you how much of a spectrum anxiety is. So we can have, in a nutshell, we can have too little anxiety, we can have optimal anxiety, and we can have too much anxiety, okay? That person who has too little anxiety is the kid or the adult who doesn't seem to really care about things. They don't wear their masks, or they might not want to when COVID began. They are not worried about the test. They're not worried about presenting in front of their colleagues tomorrow. They don't have that get-go that you would expect. And as a result, they can be a little bit inactive, and they are laid back. And now sometimes this is a personality thing. It's different. It's different than anxiety. Then we have that child who has too much anxiety. It's a child who cannot be in the present and cannot focus on things because their body is constantly going into that fight, flight, or freeze response. They're panicked, they're breaking down, their stress level is way too high. As a result, everything gets affected. Everything from their mind, their body, everything is interconnected. But then we have the one in the middle, which is what I want you to focus on, is the optimal stress level. Optimal anxiety is how your body helps you. Okay, and I'm going to point back here to hunter-gatherer years evolution. Okay, everyone always had anxiety. Okay, it's inbuilt in us. Anxiety is there to protect us. I want you to think about a hunter-gatherer, for example. When someone attacked his tribe, his anxiety response in his brain, in a part of the brain called the amygdala, goes off. Okay, I see it and I explain it to kids like a light bulb. It's flashing. Okay, it's going off in our minds. And how our bodies respond to that is anxiety kicks in, and anxiety changes our body from a physical point of view. So maybe he had tunnel vision, maybe his heart rate increased, maybe his breathing increased, maybe he started sweating. But these are all functional. Okay, our heart rate increases so that we can pump blood into the areas that we need to our legs to run away, or to our arms to fight back. We sweat so that predators, we were slippy so they couldn't actually grab us. Every single thing a symptom of anxiety that you will see with yourself and with your kid has a function. And once you educate your kids in understanding that this is your brain's way of telling you there's something wrong, I need to do something to calm my body down, or there is a threat in my surrounding that I need to manage. That is when we use our anxiety. And I'll give you an example of how a child has optimal level of anxiety. If a child has to present in front of their class tomorrow morning, Thursday morning, about volcanoes, if they have to do that, what will happen is your child will probably get a little boost of anxiety tonight, okay, or today when they come home from school. And as a result of that, they might start studying. They might start looking over the PowerPoint. They might ask you, Mom, Dad, I'm worried, help me. I don't know this slide. Can I practice for you? And as a result, they will use their anxiety to support them in their performance. And as a result, tomorrow morning when your child presents, they will probably be more confident and more aware of what they're presenting. So anxiety is there to make us act, to make us do something, to behave differently in order to meet the needs of our environment. All right. What causes anxiety? Lots of different things. There is no one-all cause. There's biological, there's social, and there's psychological, biopsychosocial model. Biological point of view, we might have physical health, we might have a disability, a comorbidity, genetic things. With psychological things, we might have poor self-esteem, coping skills, social skills. From a social point of view, we might have triggers like peers, family circumstances that are currently going on, and of course school. These things are very heavily interacted, and it doesn't mean that just because maybe mom or dad has an anxious personality, that the child will always be anxious, and vice versa. You might find that we have parents that really manage their anxiety very well, but we might still see kids that have very high levels of anxiety. But it is all interconnected, just like you'll see on this diagram. What is the treatment? And this is a very brief overview, okay? Mild to severe and minimal impairment for anxiety, we would always recommend psychotherapy, okay? One-on-one sessions, maybe family support. This is usually what is recommended. Now, this is recommended usually after parents have tried things. Usually parents will come to us and say, I've tried this, I've tried this, I've tried this. Help me, it's not working. And that is when maybe it is beneficial to get some support from a professional. With moderate to severe anxiety, they may need psychotherapy and also medication. And I know that many of you might be thinking, especially those of you who are parents, you know, medication is a very scary word when it comes to my child. But sometimes with anxiety and the nature of anxiety, in order to open a window of learning for a child or an adult, and to actually help them to go to a session, because there might be a lot of anxiety around that, sometimes medication is used. Often, in fact, almost all the time, other things, everything else is trialed before we move on to those measures. But that is usually the prognosis, and that is usually what happens as an overview. So here's the good stuff. And I hope I'm not talking too fast. I just want to give you guys as much as I can. What can you do as parents? And this starts with you. Now we say this to parents, we say it to everyone, when your mind is out of control, you need to go back to your body. Okay, when your mind is all over the place or you're feeling very anxious, you can try out every strategy that you want, but you will always go back to your mind and body. Your physical body needs to take over because they're completely interconnected. If you've ever heard kids say, I went to the playground, I feel better now, or I did my exercises, now I'm not stressed anymore, or I went to the gym for teens, even as adults, they do things that affect their physical body, and that in turn supports their anxiety. And even with anxiety, there's so much evidence out there that physical exercise and body exercises in themselves can actually be as effective in treating things like depression and anxiety in the mild level, just as much as meds can. So I really need you guys to not bypass this slide. I need you to focus on this slide because these are the fundamentals. And even if you go to any doctor out there, psychiatrist, psychologist, they will go through these things before they go through anything else. So sleep time is one of the most important things here. Sleep affects mood. Sleep is a huge topic in itself, but sleep is extremely important for our kids, and not just sleep. I'm talking about sleep hygiene. Okay, it's not about telling your kids, you know, bedtime is 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. It's about the steps and the process that you have at home before bed. There should be a routine. There should be things that happen before bed every day at the same time. It's a schedule. It's like preparing for sleep. Okay, that will help your kids feel regulated, feel settled, and of course feel in control. Physical time is so important. As an OT, I cannot tell you guys how much I value exercise for kids. We have to remember that movement counteracts fear. Okay, when we move, we release anything extra. Excitement, hyperactivity, anxiety, anger. When we move, we reduce all of those things. We need focus time. We need downtime. We need our kids to be bored. We need them to be bored. I hear so many parents tell me, oh, I don't want them to be bored. I have to fill their schedule. This is never going to help your child. Your child needs to be bored. That boredom is an art, because then will your child actually live in the present and start to contemplate on things and start to have creative and abstract thinking and learn how to problem solve and learn how to build that emotional resilient muscle. We need downtime. We need connection time with parents, and we need time in. Okay. For those of you who have heard of the principle, a lot of us know time out, and it's where we send our kids when they do something that we don't want them to do. But there's a new concept out there because they say that time out is very shaming for kids, and it can actually increase one's anxiety. So instead, I want you to think about it as time in. It's where it's a learning opportunity. It's not you're in trouble for kicking your sister. It's let's talk about this behavior. Let me teach you and understand why we don't do this in the house, why what you did is against family values, etc. That is what time in is. That is what we really need to teach our kids in. The mindset shift, and this is the biggest one here, okay? Now, I mentioned at the start, and for those of you who came a little bit late, it all starts with you as a parent. You can try and implement any kind of strategy you want to support your child with their worries, but if you are stressed and if you are anxious and you don't know how to manage it, nothing will work for our kids, okay? It always starts with you, and you cannot pour from an empty cup. So you need to have your own self-care first. But I want you to think about authority when it comes to parenting, and also snow plowing. Now, I don't know if any of you are familiar with that phrase, snow plowing, but what it is, and sometimes it can be called lawnmower parents. So what they do is they kind of sweep in. So something happens to your child. Maybe they had a fight at school, or they weren't invited to something, or they had bad grades. And you sweep in as a parent, you fix the problem, and you sweep back out and you say, wow, I did it. We're all good again. And your child is like, okay, fine. So your child never gets to practice any of those problem solving skills. They never get to learn. They never get to open up to sadness and anger and disappointment, which are really important things. But what you're doing as a snowplower is you're removing the situation, the obstacle, call it what you want. And I'll give an example to you. So your child comes home and says, Dad, I got really bad grades in my class, and in my English test, and I spent all week studying for my English test. And what you do is you go into parents or the teacher and you say, that's not fair. You know, he really did try. I disagree with the grade. I really want you to change it. Look what they did. He's disappointed. Please talk to him, etc., etc. And what you're doing is you're teaching your child that problems don't really exist, and there's a very fast way of changing things. If your daughter wasn't invited to the princess birthday party team that's on this Saturday, what you might do is you might say, I'm going to ring that parent because 5 other girls from the class were invited and my daughter should have been invited. And maybe you get your daughter an invite and you come home and say, oh, look, you got an invite now. You think that you're protecting your child. We think that we're building up our child's self-esteem and they're going to feel included, which they will, but it's not realistic. It doesn't open them up. That would have been a huge learning window for you to teach your child disappointment. Let them be disappointed. Let them be jealous. Open up the book of emotions that they can really learn from. And that is when you will see this child who is thriving, and things will come at them as they go navigate through life and teenage years and adulthood, and they will be able to get through them when you are not there. I want you to think of the next point, coaching versus protecting. You are their coach, okay? It is your job to coach your kids, to teach them, rather than thinking you're protecting them from everything. You are their teacher, okay? Prevention versus treatment. This is really important. This is all the case with everything, whether it's our mental health or our physical health. We want to prevent things rather than wait until it's time to have to treat it. Okay, we're talking about mindset changes. I want you to have a growth mindset. I want your kids to understand that things are not always the same, that they have the power to change and be agile. And when that storm comes, they won't get blown over because they have that fixed mindset and that just doesn't fit and they're too rigid. They will be agile. They will bend with the wind and come back. Okay, emotional resilience is something that is so powerful, and it is so important during times of uncertainty such as COVID. In terms of any kind of uncertainty, death in the family, divorce, transitions, financial problems, moving countries, you name it, they're all there, okay? When our kids have that resilience muscle built up, they are able to cope better than kids who might not have that exposure. Okay, when we look at EQ and IQ, we want to look at the kind of areas of emotional and intelligence, because when our kids excel in both of these things together, that is when the sky is the limit for them. That is when we see kids really blooming and bursting with their full potential. All right. And last but not least, they are a mirror of you. And I mean this. I said this at the start. When you look at your child, it's like the world is telling you, this is my issue. Okay, and I promise you, I work with so many kids and parents on a weekly basis, and parents will come and tell me, Anna, this is what's wrong with my child, this is what they're worried about, these are the triggers, and they expect me to say, here's the strategy, magic, here you go. But it will always start with you. It will always start with the parent. And often a parent will say to me, actually, I am really anxious about things. I have sleeping problems. I worry about that. And maybe I talk about it in front of my child, and that's why they're worried. Or maybe you don't. You don't even have to talk about it. Kids, as we know, are sponges. So they soak up everything. So even if you're saying to your child, it's fine, no worries, I wasn't upset, that wasn't me crying, or I didn't have a fight with your father or your mother, nothing is wrong, that's not good for our kids either, because we're teaching them that they just don't need to deal with these things. And as a result, we are going to see these things escalate in our kids. So final few slides, guys. I want to give you some practical takeaways that you can use. Now, many of you might have young kids. Some of you might have older kids or teens. You can adapt any of these simple strategies that we as clinicians use in therapy, okay? Breathing is the number one go-to strategy for anxiety. Why? Because us therapists just love breathing, but also because it's the single and most effective and fastest way to calm down and slow down that fight or flight response that I told you about. So elevator breath is one, and I love using this. I don't really use it with very young kids because they might not really be able to visualize it, but it's basically where you say, pick a building, and sometimes kids will say the Burj Khalifa because we're here in the UAE, or they might pick somewhere else depending on the biggest building that they're aware of. And I will say, imagine that your body is that building, okay? So starting at your belly button, I want you to breathe in through your nose. And at the very top, I want you to imagine that elevator going up in the Burj Khalifa up to the very top. And when it reaches the very top, imagine that all the people are coming in and out of the lift. So you're holding your breath for a few seconds, and then the lift is going down, and then you're exhaling through your mouth. And as you're doing this, you're letting go of all your worries. You're letting everything out of you. You're externalizing whatever's going on. This is really helpful. Glitter jar is another nice activity. If you Google this or Pinterest, you'll find ones. Really nice creative task to do with kids. And I have teens who have glitter jars as well. So you basically fill a jar and you'll get the ingredients online. Sometimes you put oil in them. Sometimes you'll put glue in them, and you fill it up with food coloring and glitter, and you shake it, and you imagine this being all of your worries as you watch that glitter spin. And then you just watch it. You watch it until the glitter settles and they separate. And it's really about grounding. It is, I guess, a distraction technique as well for anxiety and for our thoughts, but it is very helpful. Noticing your breath. There are many different apps out there and books and strategies that you can do, even audios on YouTube, where you become more aware of your breath. Again, you're focusing on your body rather than letting your mind race with all of its thoughts. Starfish meditation or 5-finger breathing is really nice. It's where you run your fingers up and down your other hand, and as you go up one finger, you breathe in, and then as you go down, you breathe out. Okay, really simple but very effective strategies. The body scan is something that I use with slightly older kids. It's a very simple way to kind of check in with different body parts. So they might be lying down, they might be sitting down, and you're kind of going through each part of the body and tensing it and seeing how it feels, and then releasing that tension. It's a really nice way to kind of let go of different stress or anxiety that's built up. There's lots of different audios for this on YouTube. You can type in body scan. There's other ones called progressive muscle relaxation, where you tense your muscles and then you let go of them. Very nice for older kids. For teens, we have this STOP acronym that's very helpful. STOP. This is a grounding technique for those of you who are not familiar with grounding. It's really about bringing your body back to the present moment. So where is it? And making you be on the ground, engaging your senses and coming down from your thoughts and onto the ground. So you're stopping, you're taking a few deep breaths, you're observing your body, your emotions, your thoughts, and then you are proceeding with that question, what is the most important thing for me to do right now? Or how I like to say it, what is the smallest step that I need to do right now? So I always tell kids or teens to imagine a stairs, and I'll say, you're trying to get to the top of the stairs, but it's too much for you. So I want you to take one step. What do you have to do? Maybe we can write a to-do list together, because the minute that you start working and you do that one thing, you will get the motivation to keep going and keep going up that ladder or that stairs. All right. The shield is another nice activity. What we ask kids to do is write all of their worries on one side and then all of the things that protect them on the other side. Might be positive self-talk, it might be cuddles with my cat, it could be breathing, there's lots of different things. Drawing and give your name to your anxiety. With some of the kids that I work with, we do activities like the worry monster or different names depending on what they want to call it. And what we're doing is we're externalizing it. We're saying, I am not anxious, I have anxiety right now, but I'm externalizing it. It doesn't define me. We need to teach our kids that. We can teach them to visualize a safe place, like close their eyes and imagine that they're going somewhere where they feel really safe. What does that look like? And each of their senses, what do you see there? What do you feel there? Because that again is a distraction technique, but it will also help them to be able to come away and separate themselves from their worries. Calm Down Kit is basically like a box that has everything that keeps your child feel safe and calm. Many teachers have this in school. It's really helpful. You could have things in here like blankets, a favorite toy, fidgets. You could put your glitter jar in here. You could have pictures of people that you miss that you don't get to see because of COVID. You name it, anything that you want in there. Okay, so that's it. I've shared everything. I'm keeping an eye on the time. For those of you who have questions, please put them in now. I'm going to get to them. I would like to share with you guys our world, our social world. If you enjoyed today, please feel free to follow us on any of these platforms. I'll run through them fast. The Lighthouse Arabia is our main one on Instagram. You'll see there. We're also on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, all of those. Dr. Saliha Afridi is our director here. She has a separate account and she talks a lot about anxiety, a lot about sleep, and a lot about different things. And we update these pages on a daily basis, so there's lots of content. Lighthearted Parenting is just for parents, and it's really sharing things just for parents, different strategies related to everything, and lots more there if you want to check them out. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and have a look at the questions. I think, yeah, we're doing good for time. For those of you who might have to leave, I want to say a massive thank you. I hope that you enjoyed today. I would love your feedback. Please let us know whether it's here or somewhere else. If you enjoyed today, if you feel that you've learned something, if there are other things that you would like to learn about or to know as parents, because we run so many webinars. I run different ones for parents on different topics such as high energy kids or mental health with our kids during COVID. Lots of different ones. There's a big list out there. So we're really happy to support you guys as much as we can. So questions. Okay, and I will share as well in the can I share? Okay, I don't think I can share it to all of you. So I will, if anyone needs any kind of books, please ask me individually or any resources and I will get those to you. So the first question that I have here is there a specific age where you see a child have anxiety issues before the adolescent age that we can see flags? And the answer to that is yes, we can see kids have anxiety at all different ages. And I guess anxiety is very normal, as I mentioned. If it's a red flag for I need more help, I need professional help, that might be when, as I mentioned, when we look at things like the duration, it's ongoing, it's happening more frequent, and you're seeing a big change in your child. But anxiety can happen. Anxiety is very normal to happen. Even in infants are very anxious. Young kids, it really depends on the extent of that anxiety and how long that it has been. But I would say the red flags are like the ones that I mentioned on that slide. But also in terms of changes, the biggest thing that I will ask a parent is, what are the changes that you see? That's why they're here, because there is a change in their child's behavior. And what could possibly be the trigger for that change? Because those are the things we need to think about. Someone mentioned back a while ago that they see panic and anxiety issues with younger children. Definitely panic is a big one because, again, as I mentioned, they don't have that emotional they don't have that executive functioning skills to be able to see the bigger picture and problem solve and organize themselves. They don't have that. So as a result, we see panic, and that is very normal. We have to open up for that as well. But we also need to teach our kids what are the key strategies that they can use. Someone has said, a few of you guys saying thank you. You are most welcome. Some of you apologizing for coming late. No worries. I hope that you feel that you've got something for when you did come. Will we be sending the recording? Yes, of course. We will send the recording to you. I have a question here. When my child, 9 years old, changed schools, he showed some signs of anxiety and panic attacks in the evenings and mornings, and as a result started falling asleep in our bedroom. Now that he is settled in school and has new friends, and is not worried, does not express this at least, he still wants to sleep in our bedroom. And when we move him into his room, he says he needs help. Is this a habit or still anxiety? All kinds of reasons. It could be either. So it could be that it could be still anxiety and it's security. You know, it's kids often sleep in their parents' rooms because of security. And then it can also become habitual. It can become a habit. I would say it is really important to continue to work on those skills, and transitioning from a new school was probably a huge change and move. And you know, it definitely, if you feel that you've seen a big positive improvement and a change in him, it means that he has learned to cope with that. But I would definitely say that, especially at that age, we do want to work on independent skills and understanding why he doesn't want to sleep in his own, and what kind of plan can you put in place to transition him into sleeping by himself. What kind of reinsurance and kind of boosts of love and comfort can you give him in other ways, and teaching him the importance, because sometimes when we avoid a problem or an issue that we want to change and we keep letting him, it becomes harder and harder for him to be able to change and to go back to his own bed. So I would definitely say there is a process involved in this. There are many different strategies that you can use to try and fade that plan through a sleeping schedule, but lots of different, it's a huge topic in itself, so I'm not going to be able to share all of those with you. But I would say if you're finding that you've researched some sleeping strategies and they're not working, and you're increasingly worried about this, I definitely would recommend that you reach out and see if we can support you. What about night terrors? Something to worry about. My child is 5, it comes and goes. So night terrors can be extremely scary and terrifying for a child. But the thing about night terrors is that a child will almost never remember them. Okay, it is something that happens. Usually it does not last that long. It's something that will usually pass. They are something that can be quite difficult to treat. I would definitely work on the coping strategies in the moment, in that bedtime routine, in that consistency, in changing maybe things before bed if you don't have that routine built, and comforting your child in the night and teaching them ways to let go and to deep breathe and to squeeze something or whatever it might be that gives them that comfort. But it's very hard for a parent to watch night terrors, to see their kid in that state. But I want to remind you, and if you've researched them, that kids will not remember their night terrors. They're very different from nightmares. Okay, I see some people saying thank you, helpful books. I'm not going to probably be able to get to all the questions, so if I haven't answered your question, please reach out to me if I haven't answered it in someone else's. Someone has asked me about books, so I'm definitely going to type some books in here now to that person. Give me 1 second, I'll find the question. Okay, I'm going to answer the question for that person. I give you lots of books so you can find the age that suits you. And that's it, guys. That's all the time that I have for. I know there's some more questions coming in. I hope I did answer it. You're most welcome. There's lots of you saying thank you. I really hope that you enjoyed. It's a pleasure to be with you. I really hope that I get to meet some of you. If you're ever in the Lighthouse or you see me, please feel free to reach out and say hi or contact me if you need any support. All right. Thank you so much. I wish you a lovely day ahead and weekend that's coming soon. All right. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.